Sometimes you'll find a subject that is very tricky to do justice to because of the light that it's in. This really old tree has caught my eye as I'm going past it. Its bulbous, gnarled roots are erupting out of the ground. They look really cool, but the exposure is really difficult. The background's super bright, the tree is creating its own canopy, and the shadow falling over everything is making the pictures really difficult. The frame that I want is this slightly wider option here, where I have the tree over on the left-hand side, and then I can look through to the background to kind of give it a bit of context. The problem there is always going to be exposure, so what I'm going to do is choose a filter that helps me do justice to the tree and helps me to take the picture that I saw when I was walking past. It's actually quite a difficult subject to get a really cool frame of because the tree is creating its own cover from the sun, so all of these roots are in deep shadow, and the background here, which I want up here in this top right hand third of my image, is super overexposed, and you can see even with HDR mode on that it's not making a lot of difference. So we'll turn that off and we'll take control manually. The other thing that I want to try here is using a filter that maybe is going to produce a cool looking black and white picture to give us a bit of contrast. For me, black and white is always about being in control of contrast, being really precise about what is bright and what is dark in your frame. So here, if I tap and hold, the camera is going to lock its exposure, and then I can swipe down to control how bright the frame is, and then the camera isn't going to create a new exposure after a couple of seconds. It's not going to chop around all over the place. So we're looking to make the most of the shape of this tree here and the contrast of everything that's behind it. And so we want to find the perfect midpoint, the balancing point between getting a bit of detail and light on our tree and overexposing the background, which I think is probably just about there. I think that frame looks pretty cool. So as ever, moving around and varying our compositions is the key to getting a good frame. So I'm going to shoot a couple and we'll see what we make. Let's have a look at the frames that I took of this really cool looking tree in really poor looking light. This is the camera's first effort, and as you can see, we've got this big area of overexposure here. It's in full colour, there's no contrast. It really doesn't look as cool as it did when I first walked past it, and so this was the big thing that prompted me to shoot one of the in-camera filters. This frame I like a lot better. We're using the built-in black and white filter, and even without making big changes to the exposure or the composition, we've immediately taken a moodier feeling image. You can see we've still got this big area of overexposure here though, which is actually creating flare across our subject and robbing it of a bit of contrast, and that was why I thought changing at the exposure of the frame was probably going to be what produced the best looking image. This is my favourite frame by a long way. As you can see, I've changed my position a bit and come down to make the most out of the roots of the tree, which is really what attracted me to it as a subject in the first place. I've also pulled the exposure back, and what that's done is it's kind of crushed some of the blacks down here in the shadow, really producing something with a lot of contrast, and it's left lots of light up here just in this kind of top right hand corner of the frame that just adds a little bit of interest and texture with all of these leaves and branches going on. I think it's a really interesting and moody approach to a frame that wasn't particularly well lit when I found it.